Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast, podcast number 204. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the evening of Wednesday, December the 20th, from the James Strong Studio in Western St. Charles County. I put out on Facebook a teaser last weekend that was going to have another interview with Phil, the hunter and dare I say Bigfoot stalker. And he and his son went hunting again and had another Bigfoot encounter. And I posted those pictures on the James Strong Show Facebook page. Something came up. Phil had to do something. He had to reschedule, so we rescheduled for this evening. So before we start with our interview with Phil, I just wanted to give everybody a update on the Jaguar restoration. My father and I, as most of you know by now, are restoring a 1951 Jaguar Mark 7 that he bought 55, almost 56 years ago now. Stopped restoring it, really hadn't started on it, took a few things off of it, but the thing had sat in his garage for 55 years. It's out of the garage and we're restoring it. This last weekend, Dad did not come out. It was just too cold for him, so my brother Scott and I, my youngest brother, worked on it and got a lot done. Basically, we're able to take a lot of the electronics and the heater box and everything off of the firewall and off of the sides. Again, this thing has to be stripped down to bare bones before it can be sandblasted, sealed, and primed. So we're still in the process of taking everything apart. Most everything is out of the engine compartment except for the engine and a few other things. So there's the progress on the Jaguar. So without further ado, let me introduce Missouri businessman Phil. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you this evening?
Good, thank you. Now, just like last time, because we had you on, several months ago, probably close to a year, not a year ago, probably 10 months ago. And you were talking about how you and your son hunt down in southeast Missouri, and you came upon or have come upon several Bigfoot encounters, correct?
That is correct, what we believe to be, yes.
Now, again, just for reasons of anonymity, we're going to use your first name only, Phil. Phil is a respected businessman in the area, and while I believe 100% the story that he's telling me, there's no reason for him to make it up. He's not being paid to be on this podcast. He volunteered the information to me. But I will say that some people out there may not see this as reasonable behavior. So we're just going to use his first name and keep it anonymous. Phil, when did you go hunting last, and when did you stumble upon these pictures that I put onto the Facebook page?
Well, we've been hunting several times prior to and after the date from the photographs were taken. We actually hunted that location twice earlier during the Missouri archery season and had no encounters, no signs of anything being there, which is not uncommon because we've hunted there several times before in years past, and there's only been just a couple of isolated times that we have felt like there was a presence there and actually had some kind of photographic, what we believe to be photographic evidence of something being there. So, I mean, something stimulated us to get our cell phones out, start taking pictures, and lo and behold, there was actually, we've taken pictures other times too, and just those few isolated incidents, was there something on there?
And you've mentioned to me before, off the air today and other times, where as you kind of know that something's around you. You can almost tell when you have a visitor into your camp because of the way the wildlife seems to react, correct?
That is correct. Yes, most of the time that particular area is adjacent to one of the larger sections of Mark Twain Forest, and most of the time the wildlife is very active. We see several deer, birds chirping, squirrels running about, turkey, and prior to this feeling you get of being watched, all the wildlife goes pretty much silent. So that's always a pretty good indicator that something on top of the feeling you get like you're being watched, that all the wildlife just turns off. So,
and that's kind of how it works out in the forest, doesn't it? When the top of the food chain predator is present, everything else just shuts down.
Correct.
So when you hear the wildlife, when you hear the birds, the turkey, the deer, the et cetera, and then all of a sudden you hear nothing, that raises a flag. And this time you actually didn't see anything until you started looking at the pictures, correct?
That is correct.
Now, who took these pictures?
My son actually, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I say, who took these pictures? You, your son, somebody else?
My oldest son, both myself and both of my sons, we it's kind of a treat, if you will, to be able to go hunt this piece of property. So the three of us always go. One of the other isolated incidents was just my oldest son and I, when I had a large boulder thrown in the river. It was actually the second time I hunted the property about 5 years ago. A large boulder, I'm going to estimate the size of a bowling ball, was thrown into the river around 4 a.m. and it was -12 outside. That was the first encounter of any kind or any interaction or anything that happened down there. And previous hunts in other areas have had similar, haven't had rocks thrown, but that same feeling of being watched. The wildlife turns off, and then again, it's like a treat for us to be able to go down there. So the three of us were there. Mm-hmm. I know I'm getting off subject a little bit.
No, not at all. Because the reason you go down there is not to look for Bigfoot.
Correct. We're down there to hunt, and now obviously our attention is always drawn to if potentially seeing a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch in the area. I mean, it would be a huge treat to me or whatever to get some kind of physical proof, which, outside of the photographs we've taken, which are proof enough to me and my instincts of what's going on out there. But it's like I said, it's like a treat for us to be able to go hunt that piece of property, getting permission to go there from the property owner and disconnecting from the city and everything else. It's a very remote location that's actually kind of right on the edge of a small town, but you cross the river and it's, one of the largest sections of Mark Twain Forest. So if I wanted to disappear and not be seen, I could go in there and nobody'd even know I was there. So something that lives there clearly could probably pull it off a lot better than me.
Well, and that's the thing about the state of Missouri now, isn't it? Most people who aren't from the state, or most people who aren't familiar with the state and how it is, they think, well, it's a bunch of big cities, small towns, farms, and certainly if you travel I-70 from St. Louis to Kansas City, that's what you get. You don't go through forest. You don't go through wilderness. But if you get off of I-70, especially if you go south towards the Ozark, or if you go southeast, there are many stretches of total wilderness still in the state.
Correct. Now, Mark Twain National Forest, there's I actually have my Missouri map posted on the wall here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 7 sections of Mark Twain that I can legibly see without my eyeglasses on here. Mm-hmm. I think that there's 7, but the area in particular area that we are hunting adjacent to is, I know I Googled it before, but it's several 100,000 acres.
Exactly.
Of uninhabited forest.
And by uninhabited, there's no towns, there's no villages, there's no homesteaders, there's no farms. This is forest. It's wilderness.
Absolutely. I feel privileged to live in a state that still has that much uninhabited land. So many other states are overpopulated with cities and towns and roads and whatever else, and Missouri has a lot of natural resources, if you will, still left to take advantage of, to enjoy or whatever. I could very easily myself go into one of these places with just a few minor tools and make myself pretty comfortable if I had to.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm. Well, the pictures that you sent to me, and again, I posted them on the James Strong Show Facebook page. There's 4 of them. There's the picture that was taken. And again, these were pictures that were just taken because you like to take pictures of the topography to scout out for hunting. And when you blow these up, sure enough, there was a anomaly, something looking at you from behind a tree. And I posted it, and I got some interesting results from people. Many people, they scoffed at this. Well, you can't tell what that is. How can you possibly tell what that is? And I don't know if they were expecting to see the Patterson-Gimlin film of a creature walking across a creek bed. But what you have to remember, pardon me, when you're looking at a picture like this, there's more to it than just the picture that you see on my Facebook page. Remember that what was going on at that time, the wildlife had shut down. It was quiet. You and your son had the feeling of being watched, and I know exactly what you're talking about. So along with the hard evidence, along with the physical photographs, there's the other essentials. There's the feeling. There's the quietness, and that can't be reflected in a photograph. Just in the rest of the story as you fill in the blanks.
Right. Absolutely.
And something again that I like to tell people is please understand that this gentleman is a businessman. He makes his living in his business. That's how he raises his family. That's how he eats. That's how he pays his bills. Is it safe to assume that if you went public with all this, you would have some customers who would just scratch their head, smile, and perhaps hire somebody else?
Correct. I would certainly assume that, and there'd be other people that would be take me to this place.
That's exactly right, and that's the other part of it. Because
my outlook on the whole situation, I don't have anything to gain by it. I'm not trying to prove anything to anybody. I had told both my sons about the first incident that was way further south in southeast Missouri on a conservation land lake that I was hunting at when I was about 13 years old with my uncle, who was actually in town on leave from the Navy, and we were catfishing about 2 o'clock in the morning and had a large something came down the hillside across the lake from us and sounded like it was, we heard a massive howl/roar. The flashlight that we had was only able to illuminate 2 green eyes on the very far side of the lake, and whatever it was sounded like what a person would sound like if they were taking and trying to scoop water with their hands to drink. My uncle was a grown man, had a loaded rifle in his truck that was at the top of the hill, and we reeled up our fishing poles. I think we left some stuff behind, ran up the hill as fast as we could, got in his truck and left. After that point, I brought it to the attention of some of the local people down there, and they a couple of them's heads snapped around and said, "Oh, it was nothing, it was cows." Well, I lived on a farm for 2 years. It was not a cow. There's not a farm on that side of the property. There's a couple hundred acres of forest land behind that particular side of the lake. Anyway, I told my sons about it, and they just kind of laughed at me and whatever, like several people have done. Well, the first rock thrown down in our hunting spot, my oldest son, who kind of believed but disbelieved, was actually still sitting in his Jeep, trying to sleep. I got too cold. I got out. I started a fire in a fire pit, got my coffee pot out, and that's when the boulder got thrown in the river, which he heard and felt the vibration from inside of his vehicle, which was parked about 50 feet from the edge of the water. There's a gravel drive, if you will. And that's the first time he was actually afraid, and he was convinced that there was something out there. Stories I had said all along and stuff that I believed in, then he started to believe. And now both my sons, who are in their early 20s are both hunters,